Yes, sir. We are back for another little UFC edition. UFC Saudi Arabia here. Fight night Saturday, starting at 12 p.m. Eastern time here. So we had to get this show done today. This is Friday, so we're recording this Friday, getting this done. Slate is tomorrow, 12 p.m. Eastern time in Saudi Arabia. I got my guy Dan with me. JBC, too busy building a deck, rebuilding a deck, Dan. That's what he said. What are the odds that JBC is actually rebuilding his deck? AKA, is he just watching a couple people he hired to do a new deck work?
He's probably watching our boy Kenny build the deck. That would be my guess.
There you go.
I would love to see JBC swing a hammer, though. That sounds...
Yeah, that makes sense, though. Kenny's building the deck. JBC is drinking the beers and watching him. And I could see him like JBC is probably one of those guys. He's not like old enough where he should be doing this, but I could totally see him like micromanaging everything that happens, even though he doesn't know like about deck build, like, you know, rebuilding a deck. He'll still like micromanage and be like, hey, what are you doing? Are you doing this? You know, my father does that. The only difference is my father's almost 70. And at that point, you can do that. You know what I mean? That's normal for an older guy. But I could see JBC totally just being that way, just critiquing the shit, especially if he's a friend.
Yeah, absolutely. He's definitely delegating. He's supervising. I doubt he's doing any actual physical building of the deck.
And when we DM, like that's how he made it sound. That's how he made it sound. He made it sound that way. He made it sound like he was the one building the deck. So I put the odds pretty high that JBC is rebuilding a deck.
I'm gonna have to say picture it didn't happen. I'm gonna need some.
I agree. Picture or it didn't happen, 100%. All right, we got this card here to break down, and we've had some, you know, fights get canceled, some fighters go out, but then new fighters step up, Dan. Honestly, like as a fight night card, there's some pretty good damn fighters on this card. There's some pretty good, you know, fights, I think. You know, some fighters like Ludenbach that I wanted to see fight that I'm kind of bummed because I thought that was going to be a pretty good fight. But Trocoli steps in. We'll see, you know, how he fares. Seems like at least, I don't know for sure, but it looks like to me he's at least been training or something like that. That's just what it looks like to me, but we'll see. And then we've got some other really good fighters, some new fighters to the UFC that we'll see stepping up here. But I think overall, this is going to be a fun little fight night card. What do you think just from an overall perspective here on this card?
Yeah, I agree. Whittaker, Aliskerov, that's going to be great watching Aliskerov finally get a tougher test. He's had some really good matchups lined up that have fallen through, so he's finally going to get a true test. It's a little unfortunate that it's on, you know, the short notice nature of it. You'd like to see him get fully prepped for something like this, but still exciting. I think Pavlovich, Volkov obviously is going to bang. You know, and then you've got fights all the way down the card, which, despite a lot of them, you know, having pretty wide lines, I think are going to be more competitive than the lines imply. A lot of these are kind of implied to go to decision, but, you know, I think we've got some opportunity for finishes here that aren't necessarily showing in the odds.
Well, we've seen a lot of decisions recently, and I don't know if it's I saw something since they've done the new gloves. You know, there's been a lot of decisions. I don't know if that's like what it actually is, but it's just it does seem like there's a lot of decision fights here on this card. But I think there are guys with sneaky finish ability that can get it done. So it should be interesting, I guess, to see what wins out. Could end up being a bunch of decisions.
One of the things I feel like, you know, us or, you know, just the industry at large, like has a tendency to ignore when kind of breaking down these fights for DFS is like, we always talk about sort of the most likely path. And like, this is most likely to go to, but you know, it's really helpful to consider like, well, what if this doesn't go to decision? What if this does end up finishing? Like you've got, I mean, we'll get to it obviously, but Gastelum and Haqparast really stick out kind of in that way, in that they're in the 9K range, but their inside the distance props are much worse than the guys around them. So they're going to be lower owned, but you know, it's obvious leverage point. Like what happens if these fights do finish inside the distance when they're not necessarily projected to at lower ownership? Like,
yeah. And there's a perfect example. I think it was Nasserat his last fight or 2 fights ago. I can't remember when it was. And he smashed. He had like 117, and he was one of the lower owned like stud fighters on that card.
Yeah, he knocked out Jamie Malarkey, which maybe we should have projected that to be a little more likely given Jamie Malarkey's chin issues. But
Jamie Malarkey sucks. That's But to your point, if you're playing MMA DFS, which I assume most people watching us are probably playing MMA DFS, you do want to say to yourself, okay, where are the upside? Not the likeliest path, but where are the upside paths to my fighters getting there on a card? Because at the end of the day, you want the 6 high scoring fighters, as best you can with the lineup restrictions, meaning the salary cap. So to your point, it's like that's the only way you should be thinking when you're building out DFS lineups. Now, if you're building 150, it's a little different. But like if you're just building like 1, 3, 5, 10, even 20, your pool, you should be trying to figure out based off of, the likeliest path, but also how each fighter in your pool can get there into the optimal lineup. How do they do that? And really and truly, that's all that matters, because even if it's more likely to do X, that doesn't always happen, right? We always say like the best fighter doesn't always win. Well, also like the optimal way doesn't always pan out. You know what I'm saying? Like we could come in and be like, this guy's a wrestler. And, this guy first, minute of the fight fakes a takedown and throws an overhand right and knocks the dude out. And you're like, well, there was no wrestling. He knocked him out. Right. You know what I mean? So it's just that there's so many paths in fighting, and we definitely should be thinking more in that aspect when it comes to DFS for sure. 100%. But let's get to the card here. Again, like I said, we've got some sneaky good fights here. I like this first fight to kind of start us out here. We got Zhao Long, I think that's how you say his name, versus Chang Ho Lee. Chang Ho Lee, 7,900. Zhao Long, 8,300. And we got some mid-tier pricing that we'll get to. But, these fighters are going to fit builds. Dan, when I looked at these fights, you look at Zhao, he's got a lot of, career fights. I think it's like 30 or so. He's got a lot of them. And then Chang Ho Lee, he's got like 9 or 10. I think he's only lost one of them. But I really like Lee. I think Lee is a very good fighter. And I watched some of his past fights. And his recent fight, the very last one he had, was very interesting to me, where he kind of like weathered an early storm. And then kind of, because he's got grappling upside, he wants to wrestle. He can throw, though. It's not that he can't punch. I thought he was later in the fight, he was winning the striking exchanges, but he just naturally reverts to the wrestling and the grappling. So like he'd be winning the striking and the guy would back up against the fence, and then he would just put his head down, grab his legs and drop him to his ass like for a takedown. It's like, you were winning the striking, but for DFS, it's good because I think he's going to offer us some wrestling upside, some grappling upside. At 7,900, I do like him in DraftKings as well. Zhao Long is someone who he's not as dangerous just in general. I think he's a solid all-around fighter, but I don't think there's going to be danger there. So I think Chang Ho Lee is going to be able to move forward. He's going to be able to try and, strike to grapple and wrestle. And when he gets down to the ground, he's got really good scramble ability. So if someone takes him down, he finds ways back up to his feet. He can find sweeps when scrambling to get better positions. And he's always looking to enhance his position, meaning he's not one of those grappler wrestlers who lays and prays, that is just like comfortable with taking you down and kind of just laying on you. Throw a strike, lay on you for a couple seconds. That's not the type of wrestler, grappler he is. He's constantly trying to improve and finish fights, ground and pound and stuff like that. So I do like that from him. And I think he has upside here, possibly to get a late finish. But I do like him at this price tag, 7,900, and I will be betting him as well. What do you got here with this fight?
So I agree with a lot of the points you made. Both guys, this is likely going the distance. both guys can push a heavy pace. Both guys have, like solid wrestling. I actually think Long is probably the more dangerous grappler. He's got some more submissions, or I'm not sure. I don't actually think Lee has any submissions, but regardless.
I don't think he does, but I think it's more because of the style in which it's not that he doesn't go for him. I think he just is more of a ground and pound type. When he gets on you, he's trying to throw.
So the things I do like about Lee are things that you mentioned, like he is the more aggressive wrestler. He looks, he's going to be the one moving forward. The question really is how effective are his takedowns going to be? I think Long has some pretty solid defensive wrestling as well as defensive grappling. So even if Lee does take Long down, I'm not even sure how long he's going to be able to hold him down, which is great for DFS. The more guys are getting taken down and getting up, you're racking takedowns, which are, a bit more valuable and easier to accrue in short bursts than control time, obviously. But I think if Long can stop the takedowns, and I think he's faced some tougher wrestling tests than Lee, even in the earlier rounds of Road to the UFC. I think if he can stuff the takedowns, he's actually got Lee pretty covered on the feet. I think he's a better striker. The volume is a little bit higher. And I just think he's a more solid technical striker. I don't really think either of these guys has fight-ending power, even though Lee, he's probably got better power. He does have all those ground and pound wins, but again, against very low-level competition. But, I lean Long, but it really is... It's a toss-up. The line reflects it. I wouldn't be surprised either way. And I think for DFS, I think this is another one of those fights that we kind of mention all the time. Like the ITD number is not very good, but I think you're going to see a lot of wrestling and grappling exchanges that can lead to, these are bantamweights too. So it's going to be high-paced. Both guys are capable of that. It's going to be high-paced. It could get, messy because it is still fairly low level. And that can lead to high scoring a lot of the time, even if it goes the full 15.
Yeah, so a couple points here. Chang Ho Lee does have one submission victory on his record. He is 9-1. To your point, though, the KO, TKOs that you're looking at, they're not like one punch and he drops dude and then he gets on his back and he grounds and pounds. They're not one punch and he's out. They're like takedowns and he gets your back and then starts flattening you out and friggin' knocking your head off. And he's good at that too. He'll throw elbows, you know what I mean? So, but it's not that type of power, right? So he doesn't have that. I don't think either guy really has that type of power that way. So I do agree with you. I think there's going to be a lot of grappling exchanges here. And I think it's going to come down to who wins the grappling. I will just note too, Chang Ho Lee's last fight, he was losing grappling exchanges early. But he was finding ways to get back up, sweep positions. And then eventually in rounds 2 and 3, he started to win those positions. And the other guy started to tire out a little bit. And that's where he finally found a round 3 KO, ground and pound. And, I wouldn't be shocked if something like that happens because when you have wrestlers and heavy grapplers, early on, if you're setting a high pace, you can tire out that way. You can gas yourself out if you're doing that. And it's kind of the way Lee fights. He kind of fights with that like high style pressure base. So if the guy tries to kind of equal him out that way and he's winning early, it's a spot where maybe if he starts to look tired after round 1, we could be live betting Chang Ho Lee in that spot. So just something to think about. But me and you are split on this fight. I got Lee and you got Zhao Long. Let's move on to the next fight here. Oh, for DFS, Dan, what are you doing with that fight? Are you like heavy on it because it seems to be like a grappler wrestling type fight, or are you kind of with the field?
Yeah, I like it quite a bit. I mean, I'm probably going to be closer to the field. I haven't had a chance to fully run through everything, so I just did like just some initial like optimal runs with my projections, which obviously needs some like manual editing. I'm actually coming in pretty heavy on Long. As usual, that's probably mostly an ownership thing. Also price. But I like this fight quite a bit. I think it might go overlooked just because it doesn't quite have like the ITD numbers of the other fights. probably a little bit over the field now that I'm looking at it.
I was going to say, I'm kind of surprised with the ITD numbers that you're going to be higher on this fight, just in general. I figured it would be a fight where you'd be kind of with the field or lower on at least one of these fighters.
Yeah, I'm getting the lead with the field. I didn't really get a chance. Here, let me just organize this real quick. Let me see where.
You're getting to the winner with the field. That's not going to be good. Not when he wins. Not at 7,900.
Yeah, I'm getting more. I'm getting more long than Walker.
Interesting.
Yeah, more than Walker.
It could be the builds though too, Dan, because like I wonder how popular and we'll get into it, but I think like the high 8K range is going to be pretty popular, which could land you with low 8K guys for like your last spot or two. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get a couple 7K guys, you get a couple upper 8K guys, and then you're in that range for your last spot probably. So it could be something like that with the lineup building. But let's go to the next fight here. We got, you're testing my name skills here with Magomed Godzilla, which I think I said pretty good. 9,300 for Godzilla. Brenson Robero, 6,900. Got that nice 69 tag. I don't know if that's telling me something. It might be telling us something here. But let's start with Godzilla because I remember I didn't even have to rewatch his Dana White Contender Series fight because I remember it. He was like a -700 favorite. He was the biggest favorite on the card. He was facing Jose Medina, who is literally like a standing punching bag. Like literally just stood in front of him the whole fight and was just a legit punching bag. And he could not finish that fight. And I remember watching it and I'm just like, holy shit, either Jose Medina is the toughest sumbitch I've ever seen, and he was way smaller, at least what look-wise, he looked way smaller than Godzilla, and he still couldn't finish that fight. Or this dude's like a little more, maybe a little too overhyped. He's 6-0, he massive favorite coming in, and he's a pretty big favorite here, right, Dan? I mean, he's not, what's he right now? Minus
340.
350, 340. Yeah, so he's a pretty big favorite, but Brenson Robero's got skill. He's got power. I know he got knocked out his last fight, but he's at least somewhat dangerous, Dan. And, I think both these guys have the power to obviously KO one another, but I feel like the line should be a little closer than what it is. I don't want to say Godzilla is just a fraud straight out, because it might have just been a not so great showing, or maybe he just was feeling himself and he was doing enough to win, and that's all he cared about for Dana White, not trying to like ultimately finish that fight. But that was kind of underwhelming that he couldn't finish a guy who was legit just standing right in front of him, moving forward and getting, his ass beat, and he couldn't finish it. So I'm lower on him from like a betting side. I would actually bet Brenson Robero. I do think this fight does finish, but I think this fight going to decision would be a really juicy prop, just in general, just looking at these fighters. Something like that. Whenever we think a fight is going to end early, it seems that weird stuff like the Jose Medina thing can happen, where I was sure watching the first round of that fight, Dan, it was ending. Like I was sure, and it just never ended.
Yeah, it's always disappointing. He also seemed to get pretty tired at the end of that fight, but he was pushing like a pretty high pace. The lack of finishes is concerning. His first 6 pro fights, all his opponents combined, their record was 1-7. That's a bit concerning. One of my favorite things I saw while I was watching his tape, though, was he had an outdoor fight. I forget the promotion, but
badass.
It was outdoors, and he landed a Showtime kick like during the fight and then finished the guy. But I mean, his level of competition has been really, really poor. Outside of that, though, not to punish him too much for that, I do see a lot of things that I like. He's strong, he's quick, he's got good power. He seems to have pretty decent wrestling. He seems durable. But again, all these things are pretty untested. Robero on the other side, there's not much to like about him outside of he's got power. You know, the cardio is not there. He doesn't really have too many peripheral skills. He's got some submission wins, but none since 2017. He is aggressive though, and he's got power. So this is kind of he's like a killer be kill kind of guy that we've talked about a bunch of times before, that you love to be on both sides of that because he's either going to kill or be killed. So I think I did toy with just picking Robero straight up. I think if you want to bet him, you bet him by KO. It's 4-1. Or 4-1.
It's like 4-1.
Which is, you know, slightly better than the win. I don't think he wins it. He could win a decision, but I think it's more likely one of these guys.
If it goes to decision, I think Godzilla wins.
Yeah,
a close decision here. I think if it, I do think he has some grappling, but like that's early on. Once he gets tired, that goes away. And I think Godzilla does have some wrestling. We didn't really get to see it in the Dana White Contender Series fight, but I do think he does have some. So if he does feel threatened with Robero on the feet, like if Robero lands like a big shot early, he can go to the wrestling at least, which is good, I guess, for him. But I just, from a betting perspective overall, I would be worried about, betting him. That's just me personally. For DFS, we'll get into the 9K rankings. Once we get through like all the 9K guys, we can actually rank them. But
he's my number one.
Is he your number one? It's probably just because though you love that fight. You're probably going to jam this fight.
I mean, it's fully driven like that. The inside the distance number implies that he wins inside the distance 75% of the time. So that is definitely a heavy driver. But he's also only projecting to be 39% owned, which we talked about with Nate Maness last week. Like Maness was, projecting to be high 30s, I think. And I was like, too low. I'm gonna go 50s. It didn't work out, but I would make the same play again.
I think he's going to be higher. I think he's going to be higher when it's all said and done.
That's possible. I might be a little high on, well, I actually don't know who I would take away from. Haqparast and Gastelum, honestly, might be a little high.
I don't know what you have him coming in at, but I think he's clearly got to be everyone's like number one in that range. And I think number two, there's a massive drop off just from an upside standpoint. Maybe not. Maybe it's 3 and 4, but I think
Fakhrutdinov, Magomedov, Shara, and Pavlovich are all going to be extremely popular and cheaper.
Extremely.
So I think that they're going to be part of what's suppressing Godzilla's ownership.
But I think you just named like 4 of the highest owned fighters on the card. Like
they're all cheaper.
Yeah.
And I think
we'll see.
People,
So okay, so you got Robero or Godzilla? Who do you got?
I have Godzilla. I do, despite the red flags we mentioned, all the unknowns, I do think he is more talented. He's got more tools to win. Robero really just has puncher's chance, which 100% could come to fruition, but I can't project that to happen the majority of the time.
It does feel like he's going to try and stand in the pocket and try and throw with him. Which is why, like you said, if you bet him, I think you bet him by KO. That's the best way to bet him. I think if Godzilla won, he could win by KO or decision. I don't think Robero wins a decision though. So let's go on to the next fight here. We got Muin Gafarov, 8,500 for Gafarov versus Kang Kang, 7,700 here. Gafarov still looking for his first win in the UFC here. Lost to some solid competition though, so I won't take too much away from him. 2 fights in, but I don't know. I feel like, to me, Kang Kang, he's definitely the more tested guy. Both guys actually coming off of losses to John Castaneda, who we just saw fight recently. But I think Kang Kang is sneaky here. I think he's a good dog, veteran guy. He has power for sure. Now, he doesn't have like the volume you love for someone who has power. But he does have that one punch power, and he also has submissions. He also has grappling, which is pretty nasty if he needs it too. So, he's got some wrestling if he needs it. He all around, he's a pretty solid fighter. I think Gafarov is too. It's just I feel like Kang Ho Kang is sneaky to get this victory here. Now, I don't know if he gets. I think he could be the one that actually gets a finish. I think you could see something kind of like the Magomedov fight, where he catches him in a front choke or a guillotine. Like, I would not be shocked if Kang caught Gafarov in a submission here. Wouldn't shock me at the least. And 7,700, I'll take some shots on him at 7,700. Upside is definitely there because I do think he could finish. Now, the downside is he wins the decision and gets you like 60 or 70, but he's 7,700. So I don't think that's, terrible if that happens. Obviously, if he loses, then you're dead anyways. But at 7,700, I'm going to take shots. I like Kang here. Over 1.5 was the move. I'm assuming you mean the last fight over 1.5. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's probably better than decision. That's a good point. If you think the fight goes long, maybe just bet the over 1.5. I just feel like if it goes over 1.5, and I don't know, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but once those big guys start going past that like round and a half number, it does feel like they all start to lose a little sting just on the punches and stuff and the kicks and stuff like that. That's just the way it feels to me, or most guys. Anyways, it's tough for those bigger guys. There's some guys that can carry the power, but a lot of them, I think, lose a little bit as you get past that round and a half. But I do like that lean, actually. That's a pretty good call here.
That's good bet.
What do you say about this Kang Gafarov fight, Dan?
Yeah, so I'm not sure how sneaky Kang is actually going to be because I've seen and heard a lot of talk. Kang seems to be the dog pick kind of.
I meant as a bet. He's plus 155, I think, still.
Right. Okay.
I literally think this should be like a coin flip. I didn't say that, but I feel like this fight should be a coin flip. When I looked at the fight before I looked at the betting odds, I was like, yeah, I could see Kang being like a small dog, like literally like minus 120 plus 100. Like I could see it like something like that. I literally thought it should be a coin flip though, and it was plus 155. I was like, oh well, I'm betting Kang here at that number. So that's what I meant by sneaky, but I guess it's not sneaky from a pick perspective.
Yeah, picks. I've got him. I think he's a little expensive too. He's one of the more expensive dogs. The ways he gets there are basically a wrestling heavy decision, which is totally on the table, or at least a round 2 finish, which again, he's got a long history of submissions, but I think Gafarov is pretty solid grappling offensively and defensively. Like you mentioned before, Gafarov, his introduction to the UFC has been pretty rough. It's been against pretty stiff competition. I believe his first fight was on short notice as well. So not going to hold that against him too much. I think what he lacks in technical skill, which Kang has him, I think he's like the cleaner striker. I think he's got cleaner grappling and wrestling. But I think Gafarov, what I like about him is that he is more aggressive. He's going to come forward. He's going to push the pace. Like I've seen both of these guys now in their most recent fights sort of slow down, but Kang sort of seems like he's slowing down because, he's getting older. And that's just kind of what older guys do, especially at these lighter weight classes. And Gafarov is kind of getting tired at the end of fights because he is, he's not landing a whole lot, but he's throwing a shitload of volume and he's aggressively pursuing takedowns. I like his upside a lot. I like Gafarov's DFS upside a lot more than Kang's, to be perfectly honest. And I picked him to win. I picked him to win by decision. It's going to be a little harder for him to get there, but I think, you rack up some takedowns, some control time. I think he can get there at 8,500. He is going to be one of my higher owned guys. It looks like, from my initial run, he's going to be one of, because this is one of the situations I love to attack where like the dog is probably going to be a bit more popular than the favorite. So I'm going to rock with the favorite.
It's
DFS
funny.
spot.
You broke it down great. You got through everything. And by the time you finished talking, I'm higher on King now than I was originally because you made some really good points about Gafarov. And what do we say about guys who are aggressive and come forward? It brings out the guys that aren't that way. It kind of brings it out of them because they're kind of like, hey, put up or shut up. I'm going to stand in your face and I'm going to try and make you uncomfortable. And I did say that Kang does have power. He just doesn't always throw that volume. But if Gafarov does make it that type of fight, it could bring out the upside. Because remember, we're talking about upside in DFS, right? At the end of the day, that's what we want. It could bring out that upside in someone like Kung Ho King. Maybe he does get an early finish. So the more you talked about it, the more you sold me on Kang. I'm going to be on Kang here. I like him inside the distance too. I think he has two paths because honestly, I do think he has big power still with that one punch. And I also know he's got grappling upside and submission upside. So should be a fun one. Me and you are split again. Sean Smith in the chat says age model makes its return. It's left. I mean, age model is just, we're going to get to the final fight. I mean,
fully on the age model.
Yeah, JVC has sold Dan on the age model. Maybe I'm coming around. We'll see. I won't say yet, but you never know. Let's go to the next fight, though. We got Rinat Fakhrutdinov, 9,200 for Fakhrutdinov versus Nicholas Dolby here, 7K for Dolby. And Dolby's just one of those fighters. He's got great cardio. He's not like amazing at anything, but he finds ways to win, Dan. Like he is a solid fighter. He's got 23 wins on his record. He's beaten some, decent fighters. He beat Bonfim last time out where he literally just kind of waited him out a little bit and then found a way to get the finish in the second round. And we just saw Fakhrutdinov fight really good and then slow down in the third round, get a 10-8, even though I thought the first round could have been a 10-8 if they gave who was he fighting again? Was it Aleski? Was it Dos Santos?
Last time out was Zaleski.
Yeah, Zaleski. Yeah, that's who it was. I thought the first round was a 10-8 for Rinat, and the second round or the third round could have been a 10-8 for Zaleski. But that's just me. But whatever, it doesn't really matter anyways. They got a draw. So people are like, okay, Nicholas Dolby, this dude, I think he gets taken down a lot early, Dan. Could that tire Rinat out from just taking him down constantly? Because the one thing Rinat doesn't have, he doesn't have great control. He's really good at getting you down, but there's a reason why he's got so many takedowns in the UFC. They're getting back up a little bit. And I think Nicholas Dolby can get back up and he will get taken down again. But throughout 3 rounds, can Rinat sustain the pace against the guy who his best attribute is his cardio, and he uses it as a weapon, and his pace?
Yeah, those are super valid concerns. And Fakhrutdinov, he's projecting to be like 41%, which is going to be one of the most popular up there, if not the most popular by a slim margin. But yeah, I mean, the cardio concerns are real. The thing about Dolby, yeah, I don't know. He's just like very unexceptional everywhere. He's like a perfectly serviceable guy. He'll go out there. But one of his main things is like, I think he's a little bit more prone to being controlled than you said. Like, he absolutely could get up, which, as we discuss all the time, like could be even better because we're racking up takedowns and control from Fakhrutdinov. But you nailed it. Like, as far as the matchup analysis goes, is I don't think he's going to finish him. Like, he does. Fakhrutdinov has like a pretty good right hand that he can sit people down with. But, Dolby has been really durable and has good cardio. So it's a really interesting matchup from that angle. So, the 2 questions you're asking, can Fakhrudinov's cardio hold up over 3 rounds? But he's all like, it's weakness against weak, or, guys' strengths against weaknesses. It's like Fakhrudinov's bad cardio versus Dolby's good cardio, but Fakhrudinov's wrestling and takedowns versus Dolby's poor takedown defense. What do you think is going to win out? And again, this is one where I don't have a super strong lean, but I picked Fakhrutdinov by decision. I think he's going to get there. I think people are maybe a little higher on Dolby now, given his last like couple performances where he's, not supposed to win and then he pulls it out. Because he's not looking good in the beginning of those fights. It's another one of those things where it's like, yeah, he's getting the shit beat out of him and he outlasts the guy. It's like, how great is that?
Well, because he's not the most talented. I mean, you said it. It's not like he's the most talented guy.
Right.
It's not like he's the most dangerous guy. He's just solid and uses his cardio as a weapon. But
you know what? I discounted that with He-Stand last week, much to my own detriment. So maybe maybe it's a little more valuable than I'm giving it credit for.
Here's the thing, though. I don't think either one of them finishes. Like, even if Renat does gas, I don't think Nicholas Dolby finishes him like he did Bonfim. Like, I don't think that happens. So I don't think either guy gets finished. I think Dolby can stay safe, even if he's getting absolutely destroyed with the takedowns and the control time. Like you said, even if he is getting controlled, I don't think he gets finished. I think he can find ways to stay safe. So if I was betting Nicholas, what about split decision? Nicholas Dolby by split, like 14. It would be something like that, though. It'd be like a weird, it would be something like that where somehow he gets 2 rounds and 2 judges' scorecards or something like that. I'm not saying that's going to happen.
I've seen a lot of talk this week about live betting Dolby. I think that's probably not too bad. Like if he's, a mega dog going into the 3rd round, maybe you throw a little sprinkle on there. But
Renat's definitely the DFS play. Like Dolby's probably like, how would you rank Dolby, Robero? Who else is in that like low 7K range, 7,200? Gordon.
So Robero I have as well. Robero and Trocoli I have as the 2 like far and away best plays.
Trocoli,
7-5 and down. And again, this is just based on ownership. Odds. I haven't really adjusted anything. So Dolby doesn't rate very well for me. I'm getting to him about the same rate of the field. I haven't projected for 17% ownership. I think he even possibly could come in a little bit higher because I think people feel safe or, safer with him than the other options down there because he's shown he can win as a dog. He can, outlast and get there. And I believe he scored pretty highly his last time out. I think it was in the 90s. He might have even been optimal, I think. So
who was it?
Dolby.
I think he was optimal.
Dolby scored his last 3 times out, which he's won his last 4 in a row, but his last 3 times out were 106, 90, and 94, all at like 7K and below. So, box score watchers are going to love that. I'm just not sure.
Renat's not getting finished early, by the way. That's not happening. Like if for some reason it would be late, he's not getting finised like that. He's not gassing after a round.
So you've got a 3rd round finish. That's the 106, and then you've got 90 and 94 in 2 decisions. So he puts up the striking volume. He can score takedowns. Dolby can. I'm just not as enthused with him in this matchup. I think people are overvaluing him a little bit. Having said that,
if you spend 2 rounds on your back, Dan, you're not going to be getting much volume. If that's so, I don't even know if the volume's going to be there. So I'm with you. I think Dolby's probably not the best DFS play. I think if you want to bet him and just hope Renat's cardio goes out the window again and it happens a little earlier and Dolby can, find a way to, win 2 rounds, like I said, in like a split, I guess that's possible. But from a DFS perspective, Renat's got all the upside to have a big finish. Mm-hmm. Do you have him higher than Galiazulov in the 9K range?
No, I actually have him lowest, but that's because, again, these are just like raw numbers at the moment. Like I'm going to have to add quite a bit to his projection to even get him. Like I just ran my stuff raw and I'm getting to him at sub 10% at the moment, but that's just because of the way I rate things out. I'm going to increase him obviously for, takedowns, which don't get accounted for in that number.
Right.
I mean, his upside is sky high. I think last time when he went to that draw, I think we were kind of, I might have been heavy on him, but I do remember JBC giving us all shit, calling us fat rat fish when the draw came in.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, because I believe he was like 9.5K plus, and I think he was like the highest owned on the card. And this is not really the same situation. He's not even the most expensive fighter on the card.
He was 9,100 that card.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. I think JBC just didn't love Fakhrutdinov or whatever.
Well,
yeah.
The ownership must have been sky high then, because I'm misremembering the price. But yeah,
it definitely was, though. 100%. It was the ownership. So, yeah, either way, I do think that this is a good fight for DFS for Fakhrutdinov. Everyone's going to have it, so you're not getting cute with this. But I'm going to probably be overweight because I just think the takedowns are going to be there. Dolby, though, he's got a puncher's chance. I mean, I don't think either guy gets finished. So I do think this goes to decision. So I'm probably going to bet Fakhrutdinov by decision. But if you like Dolby, maybe just go Dolby by decision or split decision, because honestly, I don't think he's winning like a normal decision. Like if he wins a decision, it's like a split, very close, where some of the judges are in for like wrestle and control time, and maybe Dolby does a little bit, on the feet and maybe a little damage, and he wins it that way. So that's the way I see that fight going. But a side note too, Nicholas Dolby looks way bigger than Fakhrutdinov when they were like after the scale weigh-in. I don't know if you saw that, but to me, he just looked way bigger. I don't know how they were both the same weight there, because Dolby just looked more filled out. You know what I mean? Like Fakhrudinov's not as like filled out as Nicholas Dolby. But yeah, we got Dolby pissed Renat pissed you off last time. Renat pissed a lot of people off last time because, like Dan said, he was very, very popular. I was one of them. I was one of those fish who played Renat. I'll probably play him again. So who cares? And then Jason says, I hit high stand round 3 sub at 37-1. No luck in betting, Jason. You hit it, you won, baby. That's how it works. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. 100%. That's like when you say we picked Weston Wilson by submission at like whatever it was, 6 or 7-1, whatever that bet was that JVC loved last card, and we all got on it and hit for it. So
I was walking home. I was walking through like a really nice neighborhood when I opened Discord, and I saw that Weston Wilson had won, and I like yelled in excitement. My girl was just like, yo, keep it down. Like, we're gonna get neighborhood watch called on us. It's like this. That
was like the one time I forget who it was. I had some guy at like 40-1 to round 3 submission, and I had like $500 on it, and we were in this burger place. This really nice. It was like a really nice burger place, though. It wasn't like a normal burger joint. No, it was a sit down, nice restaurant. Yeah, but no, more higher end. I forget the name of it. It'll come to me in a sec. But they do like sick burgers and stuff like that, and milkshakes and stuff. And I remember screaming. It like literally, my girlfriend was like, or my wife now was like, oh my God. Like, oh my God, just put her hands over her face. I had like literally everyone around me just like staring at me. I'm just like, my guy just won by submission. No, even the waiter was like, this guy is a little weird. Are you sure you're okay? To my wife, like, yeah, I'm okay. This is normal. Like we're usually at home during MMA. That's when I told my now wife, I said, you can't take me out during MMA cards. Like that should be a rule. Okay. No guy wants to go out. Women, no guy. I know there's no women watching the show, but if there is, this is advice. No man wants to go out during MMA. Like nobody. Okay. They want to go out before, or they want to go out after. Like I told my wife, after this card, because it starts early, we can go to dinner. It can be a late dinner. That's fine with me. But you can't go during the damn fights.
I'll even extend that to like, I don't want people around me, period, when I'm watching fights. Like I actually had a buddy over at my house while we were watching the Armfield He-Stand fight. And like afterwards, like the next day, I was like, I'm so sorry you had to see me like that. I was getting real upset. Like,
was your buddy like a big bettor?
Was that?
Does he play DFS or bet?
No. He like doesn't even watch fighting. He was just like,
so that's the problem. Because if he was sweating it out with you, I think it would have been fine. But because he like doesn't know anything about it, you're like,
I mean, it was fine. It was just like after the fact, it's like, oh shit, I like never act like this in front of people.
It's all right. That's why you like to be alone. I'm the same way. I like to be alone when I bet and watch the fights too. But there's a few people I'll be okay with, but there's not many where I'm like, yeah, just come on over. You know what I mean? I'm like, come on over after I'm done watching the fights.
When the Eagles were in the Super Bowl, I had like multiple friends be like, oh, like your birds are like, can I come over? Like, are you having anybody over to watch the game? I was like, no one's allowed over. Like, everybody stay the fuck away from me. Like,
but
I don't be around anybody.
But they lost, so maybe you should have changed your mind.
Oh no. I'm talking about the good Super Bowl they played.
Oh, the good Super Bowl, the Philly special, the Nick Foles special. Okay, yeah, that one. All right, let's go to the next fight here on the card.
I had wiped the most recent one from my memory. It just like hurt me so badly. I've been trying to forget.
Dude, the whole year I was like, Philly's the best team. Philly's the best team. I bet Philly.
I blame the field.
You should just never bet against Mahomes. Like, I've been wrong like the last 2 times with Mahomes in Super Bowls. And I'm like, maybe Mahomes is just like Brady. Like, I never bet against Brady. Why the fuck am I betting against Patrick Mahomes? Like, just stop. Yes. But I couldn't help myself. I was like, Philly's the better team. Like, they have better players everywhere except for like quarterback. And they still have a really good quarterback. So I'm like, but
that Jalen,
I'm wrong.
The Jalen fumble. I can't. We should talk about something pleasant, like people trying to knock each other unconscious. Not this.
Well, okay, maybe we'll get that here. Well, I don't know if we're gonna get unconscious here, but we might. You never know. Here we got Muhammad Naimov, 8,300 on DraftKings versus Philippe Lima at 7,900. Lima. I really like him. I like what I saw on tape. He doesn't have a fight in the UFC, but he does have a bunch of, other fights. He's fought 5 rounds recently. I think that was his last fight where he absolutely dominated. Absolutely dominated. He can do work on his feet. He can do work grappling and wrestling. He kind of has a full arsenal, I would say. He's in really good shape. He's got great cardio, puts on a high pace. So I think this is going to be a fun fight. Like, I really think this could be a banger of a fight because Naimov is dangerous. He's someone who, like the Nathaniel Wood fight, I remember like 30 seconds into the fight, I forget who it was, if it was DC or Bisbee or whoever it was calling the fight, but it was like right in the beginning. And you know how like the favorite, they always talk about the favorite first. So like Nathaniel Wood was a -320 favorite going into that fight. And so they're just like, absolutely like, Nathaniel Wood's skills they're just so amazing. And right as they said like that, he got like knocked and dropped and he wobbled and they were like, oh my God. Like right as they said that, Muhammad Naimov was like, yeah, I'm okay too. I'm a decent fighter. Ends up winning that fight as a massive dog, or not massive. I think it was like +2 something. Then he beats Silva round 1. This guy's got power. He's got takedowns. He's got all of it. Like, I think he's a very, very good fighter. And I think Lima is, even though we haven't seen him in the UFC, I think he's an extremely good fighter. I think they're different fighters, though. Like, I think Lima, his skills, like his grappling skills, his scrambling skills, could be the difference if Muhammad Naimov tries to, go to the wrestling early and stuff like that. Because Lima is very capable on the ground. He's very skilled. If he gets taken down, he can find his way back to his feet quickly and safely. He can also reverse positions. Like I said, he's in very good shape. So even if you put on a pace early, he can withstand that and then overcome that in the later rounds. And he's got heavy ground and pound. He's got submissions if he needs them. Really just the full package. So I think this is a banger of a fight. I think it's going to bring out the best of Naimov and Lima. And I think it's going to be optimal for DraftKings. I think the winner here at 8,300 and 7,900 is going to be optimal. So I'm super heavy on this fight. I'm going to be a little higher on Lima because I am betting Lima to win, but I think it's going to be a great fight.
Yeah, I haven't actually I've gone back and forth on my pick here. It's like the main question, I think Lima is more talented basically everywhere. Naimov probably has better power. But
I think that's the one thing he has.
Yeah,
like that's clear.
I think outside, and also and the main problem though here is Naimov is going to have like the size and strength advantage because we've got Lima coming in on short notice. He's going to be up a weight class. We're down at 145. Naimov has fought up at 155 before, and one of his strengths, like I don't really rate Naimov all that highly. Like his last time out against Silva, that was a Silva injury, so not really. I don't like count that as a knockout, obviously. He knocked out Jamie Malarkey, which we already said in this show. It seems to come up every week, but like everybody knocks out Jamie Malarkey. And then his fight with Nathaniel Wood, like he won, but just rampant cheating. Like kicked him in the nuts twice, multiple fence grabs, like grabbed the inside of it. He probably should have been finished at the end of that fight by Wood, but he grabbed the inside of his glove to like kind of stop the ground and pound.
Hey, if you're not cheating, you're not trying, Dan. All right, get with it.
Naimov will be. That's the thing. Like he's going to be the bigger guy. He's got more power, and he's going to be rampantly cheating. And will he get punished? Probably not. Like guys never seem to get points taken for cheating. And like if you're not cheating, you're not trying. If you're Naimov and you've been cheating your ass off, and no one's penalized you for it, why would you ever stop? So yeah, I am a little less enthusiastic about this fight for DFS because I think it does go to decision either way. Like I said, I think Naimov's power is slightly overrated just given like his competition and the circumstances. Yeah, it's tough, man. This is a tough one. I'm still not entirely sure how I want to approach it. Obviously, the price is going to make it a little bit more popular, but I don't know.
Get in there, Dan. Who do you like? Who's the winner? I want to hear you say it.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I think I'm going to lean.
You just told me that Naimov is a cheater and that Lima is kind of better everywhere. He's just not the bigger guy, and he doesn't have the most power.
And that's the thing. I mean, it's just like a really unideal situation for Lima to be coming into. And Naimov is going to be bigger and stronger. He's one of these like Tajikistan fucking strong guys, He
also looks stronger than what he actually.
Yeah.
Like he's stronger than what he actually looks like. When you look at him, you're not like, wow, that dude's yoked, you know what I mean, or anything like that. But like. He looks at like when you look at Lima, you're gonna say that dude's shredded. Like dude is shredded, but he's gonna be lighter. Is your point? Like he's gonna be lighter, but he's gonna have like the speed advantage. I think personally, maybe not with the hand, just like in general. I think he's gonna have the speed advantage, and I think he's gonna be able to be first in the scrambles, which I think is gonna be key if Naimov goes to the wrestling.
Yes.
Because I've seen him reverse positions multiple times where he finds ways like on top of guys. And he, again, is one of those guys. He doesn't just, when he takes you down, he doesn't just sit there. Like he is advancing positions. He is also trying to finish fights. He's not one of those dudes that just lays on you.
Right.
So like Renat, I give him shit sometimes because I feel like he'll just lay at points. Like that's not what Lima does when he gets on the ground. So you better be ready because this dude's gonna work for 3 rounds.
Yeah. So pressed on it, I'm gonna go with Lima. Like despite the size disadvantage, the short notice nature of the fight. I think short notice can be a little bit overblown nowadays. I think Lima was actually had a road to UFC fight that he was either preparing for or that fell through. So now he's obviously getting his shot, stepping up on short notice.
He's the favorite too, right, Dan? Like he's still the favorite
now. Yeah. Where is that? Yeah.
What's he, minus 112?
Slight favorite. I see minus 116 to minus 104. So, and I believe he opened at like plus 180 dog. So that moved like
Yes.
pretty hard. I'm gonna back Lima. I will say, yeah, I'm gonna back Lima here. I think if he doesn't win, I think we walk away. I had this vision in my head, sort of like, you know, when these guys step up on short notice and they make like a really good account of themselves, but they just don't quite get there. I can see us like breaking down Felipe Lima after this fight if he loses, being like, you know, he went out there against Naimov and he like really gave him hell and he lost a close one up on short notice, up a weight class. I could see that.
So I think what's going to be the difference in the end is going to be the cardio.
Yeah.
I think Naimov slows down, especially if he tries to wrestle early. Like, especially if that's the case and he tries to wrestle early. I think he slows down in rounds 2 and 3, like the end of round 2 and 3. And I like the look of Felipe Lima. You get 35-1 in round 2 submission and 55-1 in round 3 submission. So I'm gonna sprinkle a little cheese on that because I do think Naimov will slow down at some point in this fight as it goes later on. And I do really feel like Lima will have a big advantage at some point in this fight later in the fight when that happens. So
I think
I
think that sounds right. And yeah, just circle back just from a DFS perspective. I think Naimov is he's probably relying on a finish to score well enough, considering, you know, he's not priced super prohibitively, but there are some good finishers in this range. So
I mean, he could wrestle. He could wrestle his way to a decision. I mean,
it could be like a wrestling, grappling heavy. You know,
does 97 in a decision get you there?
97 in a decision. I have a hard time kind of seeing that, but
he did it against Nathaniel Wood. He had 4 takedowns, 7 minutes of control time. I don't think they gave him a knockdown. Yeah, they didn't. But
yeah, I mean,
I'm just saying, like, he had 4 takedowns. Like, if you told me he got in the 90s for a decision win, you know, that's possible.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I think for a wrestler. I'm not saying that's what happens, obviously. I'm just saying, could it happen? I do think it's a possible outcome. So, but all right, we're both on the Lima train, 7,900 on DraftKings. Yes, sir. Sign me up. Let's move on to the next fight here. We got Jared Gordon here. Gordon 7,200 versus Nasrat Haqparast at 9K. Haqparast coming off a KO victory over who else? Jamie Malarkey, like we talked about earlier. And he's 9K. Dude, one of the things about Nasrat, and I think it was, I'm not sure if it was the Malarkey fight or the Quinones fight, but I think it was the Quinones fight. But he got in like really good shape for himself recently. In one of these past fights. I don't know if you remember, like he used to look like he was out of shape. He wasn't out of shape, but he used to look that way. And he clearly changed something with his diet because those type of transformations coming from, you know, someone like me, like those are diet changes. Like when you actually turn like that and you go from having like a little baby fat in the pouch to like having a little 6-pack showing, you're probably changing something with what you eat during your fight camps. So like I would bet that's what he's doing. And he's looked really good. Like he's looked really good. Like on the scales, he looks really good. Again, coming in for this fight, he looked really good on the scales. And I think he's a very good fighter. Like I think he's just an overall better fighter almost everywhere than Jared Gordon. So I got him. I think he wins. I think he could win by KO. I do think that this fight goes to decision, but I do also think he has the volume in a decision to get there, even at 9K. So I like him. I'm wondering what his ownership's going to be because I know he's going to be lower than Renat, and I know he's going to be lower than Gavaskulov. What do you think his ownership's coming in at?
I have him at 24%. Gordon at 20.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's actually higher than what I thought. I thought he was going to be like just under 20.
It might be a little high, but you know, I think you know, Gordon can be hurt, you know. And I think compared to Gastelum, like you mentioned before, like the volume is better. He does look healthier and healthier every time he gets in the cage, which he initially started training MMA. I think his parents like had him start training MMA to like get him in shape, you know, because he was like an out of shape guy. So it makes sense that every time we see him, he'd be getting, you know, he would just be improving in that way every time. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely got Gordon on the feet. I think Gordon's probably best shot. And the way Gordon tries to win fights is he wants to get in your face, kind of make it dirty. He wants to take you down. He wants to ground and pound you. I think Haqparast, though, has really solid takedown defense. So I'm not sure Gordon is necessarily going to be able to get it to the ground. You know, Haqparast doesn't offer much offensively, but he's solid defensively. I think he'll be able to get up. Yeah, I just think that Gordon, it's pretty thin for him. And, you know, we saw Gordon. I thought he won that fight with Pimblett, but, you know, in a lot of ways, that's kind of Gordon's like ideal fight. And he lost a close, you know, he lost one on the cards. So, you know, especially in Saudi Arabia where he's, you know,
and he lost to Mark Madsen, which, again, like that dude he's one dimensional, and yeah, I like you put whatever stock you want into it.
He beat Mark. He knocked Mark Madsen out.
I know, but that's what I said. Did I say loss? I meant win.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I meant like he beat a dude who's literally one dimensional. Like put whatever stock you want into it, but like
on his way out.
Yeah, the Nasrat is a legit fighter who I think has him. I don't think he's going to be able to take him down because, like you said, I'm pretty sure his takedown defense is very good.
Even if he does, he's not going to be able to do anything with it. I don't see him being able to do much with it.
And on the feet, like, it's not even close. Like, Nasrat has him everywhere. Like, so the only way he wins this fight is, like you said, he makes it, like, dirty. He gets in his face. He keeps moving forward. But if that happens, Nasrat's probably in line for a knockout, because if you stay in some dude's face who's really skilled with the striking long enough, you're probably going to get put down at some point or wobbled. So, yeah, all right, maybe I should be changing my bet to KO at the price tag. I think it's plus 225 right now, Dan.
Yeah, let me see. My sheet is like
DraftKings plus 225.
Oh, that's interesting. For a knockout for Haqparast? Okay. Yeah. I saw I have 160 in my sheet, so that's a good number.
I got decision at 120 and KO TKO at plus 225. So probably the value's in the KO, right? At that number.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and like, so, you know, Gordon, he got knocked out in that Bobby Green fight. It wasn't a true knockout. It was like a clash of heads, you know, followed up by some ground strikes. But, you know, regardless of how it happens, he still, you know, got hit in the head and got knocked unconscious. So you don't love that going into another fight. It's like every time you get knocked out, it kind of makes you more susceptible to being knocked out in the future. So that's kind of another strike against Gordon. I think the way Gordon's priced, though, like if he does win, his path to victory, he should score pretty well. So I don't hate him as like a sprinkle, but I'm going to be quite a bit lower on Gordon than I am on pretty much all the other dogs.
Yeah, me too. I'm with you. And I think I'm going to be higher on Haqparast than Godzilla in DFS. I'll probably be higher on him than Godzilla. He'll probably be, him and Renat will probably be my two favorite 9K plays overall for DraftKings.
Yeah, if you're going to play Renat, it's like if you're trying to play Renat plus Godzilla, like you're starting out, that's like pretty restrictive. Not to say not to do it. Like I'm certainly going to have that combination a bunch, but I think like, yeah, if you're combining Renat with,
yeah, so if you do Renat, Godzilla right there, you're at 78, 75. Then you got to get a few of those, like, let's say you get like a few of those mid-tier fights in, right? Like, let's say you go Lee because he's a mid-tier guy, and we like Lima, right? Yeah. That's so right there, those four, you got 7, 8, 5, 0 for your last two spots. You can make a team work with that, Dan. It's just like you're kind of restricted with how many combos you have of that team. Right. And I think a lot of people are going to have those type of teams because there's a lot of mid-tier fights. You know what I mean? So then you only got to play one cheap dog on a team like this, right? So just throw any cheap guy you like in there with these guys. You know, if you put Trocoli in there, you got 9K left. So then you got your pick. You know what I mean? Like these teams are going to be very popular and easy to do, but there's not going to be too many like combos. So I'm probably going to try and stay away from those type of teams because I do think they're easy to build. But I also think a lot of people are going to build those teams. That's just my perspective on it. But I think with so many mid-tier fights and those, like you said, those cheaper, the guys that aren't 9K, they're just below 9K that you can get in, like the Sharas and the Pavlovich, like they make this build work so easily. You take one cheap dog, you take two coin flip fights, you take your two studs at the top, and then you finish out with another stud. Like that's a build everyone's going to have. So
it's a popular way to go.
Yeah, for MMA anyways, like I'm going to stay away from those type of builds just naturally. I don't want them. I think they're going to be very popular. All right, let's go to the next fight here. We're going on to Johnny Walker versus Volkov Oezdemir. I think I said that right. Oezdemir 8K, Walker 8,200 here. I went back and forth on this fight because at first I was like, this is Johnny Walker. This is Johnny Walker all day. I'm watching some tape on Johnny Walker, and I'm just like, man. But the more I watch, and this is the bad part about sometimes watching, is you start to remember all the things that you remind you how much you can't trust Johnny Walker. And you're like, okay, wait a second. Is it Johnny Walker all day? He's 8,200 on DraftKings. Now, to these guys' credits, actually, both of them, they have fought some solid guys. You know what I mean? Both of them have. It's kind of impressive, Oezdemir's record, even though he's lost to a lot of the top tier guys. Like he hasn't really beaten a lot of the top tier guys. He's at least fought them, right? Ankalaev, he went to a 3-round decision. Yuri, I mean, you can't knock him for losing to Yuri. He's fought with Krylov. Bogdan, he beat, and we just saw him destroy Span. So, like, you know, he's dangerous. He can finish you. It's interesting. He has had 3 decision fights in his last 5, which is very interesting. Just from the fighter he is, you wouldn't expect something like that.
Yeah.
But I do think this is an interesting fight because Johnny Walker, he's also dangerous. He wants to keep space, right? He's so big and long. He wants to keep space. He does have power. And Volkov, he wants to get inside, right? He needs to get inside. So it's like, who wins out? Like if Johnny Walker can just stay on the outside and pick him apart, I think he wins a 3-round decision like easily. And he looks like a minus, 350 favorite or something like that, even though he's not. But Oezdemir is still dangerous, and I do think he could give Johnny Walker problems. I'm still going to go with Walker. I think in the end, I'm going to go with overall skill and talent, and I think he's got him in that department just slightly. So I'm going to go with Johnny Walker, but I get people saying they can't trust him. Like I would understand if people are like, I can't trust that guy, but I think he's just too talented here. I think he's going to win. My question is, does he win by decision? I think that's the most likely outcome here. So I'm going to say decision here, but it wouldn't shock me if one of these guys went down.
Yeah, I think Johnny Walker, I think if he wins, it's going to be by decision. You've seen Johnny Walker's style change up quite a bit over his last few fights. He used to be, plays to the crowd, wants to be like fan favorite, kind of wild, takes a lot of risks. He's not that way anymore. You've seen a more reserved, kind of more calculating Johnny Walker, which is kind of a funny thing to say, but it's true. So I don't think he's necessarily going to be trying to get in Oezdemir's face. I think he'll more want to strike from the outside, use his length. So I think if Walker wins, it is by decision. I picked Oezdemir inside the distance. I just trust, like you said, Johnny Walker, not very trustworthy. Oezdemir, much more durable as well. Like I think Johnny is much more susceptible to being hurt, like you alluded to before. Oezdemir has been knocked out, but by Yuri and Cormier, and yeah, he got knocked out by Yuri. Where is it? In 2020, hasn't been knocked out since. Yeah, it's a coin flip fight. You know, light heavies, they both have a ton of power. They both have been knocked out, but I just trust Oezdemir's durability a little bit more. And I think I like him as a DFS play better for that reason as well. I think this fight, it's going to be popular and rightfully so, but I also think it's got significant bust risk because we've seen these big guys who 100%. Go out there and just try to throw down. Like
if this goes to decision, I think it busts.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially with like a lot of the fights that we already talked about that are in that range. Like you've got, we jumped around a little bit here on my sheet. But even like going right back to Naimov Lima, which I wasn't like crazy about, like that could easily outscore Walker Oezdemir if that doesn't end in a finish, you know, in that range. They're both going to be popular. I'm going to have more Oezdemir because I think he wins. I think his winning, like his,
I think his upside in DFS is way better,
much higher. Yeah.
Yeah.
Having said that, either one of these guys, they both have knockout power. And you know, when you're just, you know, the striking exchanges highly variant, so it could go either way. But I'm just gonna choose to put my trust in Oezdemir.
Yeah, Dan, is this what you saw? Do you agree that Oezdemir is better everywhere?
I mean, I could definitely see the argument for that. I think it's close. I think Oezdemir has better power. Johnny, obviously, like they have pretty different games. They're both one-dimensional.
They have different styles. It's completely different too. So I don't think it's literally as easy as like, well, this guy's just better. Like I think that's the wrong approach. I literally think it's the reason why it's a coin flip fight is because it's two styles that are very opposite in which style wins out. And I just refuse to believe that if Johnny Walker can stay on the outside, use his movement, his kicks, his range, I think he wins a 3-round decision pretty easily. If Oezdemir can find his power, get inside of Johnny Walker's range and you know, close that distance, I think Oezdemir has a good chance of knocking him out, like Dan said, because we've seen Johnny Walker get knocked out, and we've seen him get knocked out early too. May they be good fighters, obviously, that knocked him out, but still, Oezdemir is a good fighter. He could easily knock him out, but I don't think it's just as easy as one dude's way better than the other. I think it's kind of a little more than just, yeah, he's better everywhere. No, I don't think that's the case.
So, I mean, I will say like marginally, yes, just because, you know, if you think the striking is, I think Oezdemir is like slightly superior striker. And then when it comes to like the grappling and the wrestling, neither guy tries to really do it offensively, but Johnny Walker has really struggled defending wrestling and grappling, where Oezdemir is like much more solid in that regard. So yeah, I would have to give the edge to Oezdemir basically everywhere, but like, you know, different styles, and it's not like one of these guys is miles and miles ahead of the other. Right. I can see this going either way.
That's the point. So yeah, choose your side. This is a coin flip fight. Dan's on the Oezdemir side. Inside the distance,
it's going to be high owned. It's going to, you know, each side is 30%. So
I think if you're on the Johnny Walker side, you should be fading it for DFS. Bet it, but I think it's a good fade if you're on the Johnny Walker side. I think Oezdemir is the better DFS play because I think he's got a better shot at getting inside and knocking out Johnny Walker than Johnny Walker does of knocking out him. Not that Johnny Walker can't knock out Oezdemir. I just think, you know, Oezdemir is a little more of a chance that way.
That's right.
So yeah, that's how I play it for DFS, and that's a way to get, you know, that's a way to get a little hedge too. If you you know, like Johnny Walker, you can get a little Oezdemir for DFS, and you know, not be completely pissed if Johnny Walker doesn't get it done, and if he does, at least you won the bet. So yeah, that's where we're at. Dan's on Oezdemir, I'm on Walker. Let's go to the next fight here. We've got The fight that I wanted to see so bad, and then we got the Trocoli, last second coming in to fight. But still should be an interesting fight. We got Shara Magomedov, 8,800 for Magomedov versus Antonio Trocoli. Trocoli 6,700, the cheapest fighter on DraftKings. Dan, I know you're high on this fight. I think you're high on Trocoli overall as a dog. I think his upside, it would be like his wrestling grappling, because I don't think he wants to stand with Shara. I don't think many people want to stand with Shara. So I would assume that's his path, but talk about what you see in this fight.
Yeah, so Shara is going to be the most popular play on the slate for some obvious reasons, obviously, like his opponent, short nature. His opponent, which I broke down last week for Aliskerov, this is much different. Like, I didn't think Trocoli stood any kind of chance against Aliskerov. It's highly unlikely he wins here as well, but, there's a lot of red flags around Magomedov, specifically his grappling and wrestling, which are both completely non-existent. He's a great striker. He uses his kicks like, he's got great quick kicks that he uses to manage range. Like, his approach is very kick heavy. And yeah, I mean, he's a great kickboxer, but doesn't offer anything else as far as grappling and wrestling, which happen to be Trocoli's strengths. Now, we have so many unknowns surrounding Trocoli. He hasn't fought in about 2 years. The tape that we do have on him is him just kind of like smashing low-level guys. But the one thing we do know is that he does have some grappling. He does have some wrestling. He's got submission wins, and he's never been knocked out, which is pretty interesting to me. Because, again, despite his low level of competition, I think, he shows durability. And I think in order for Shara to be optimal, he's going to need to find a finish. Because he's not getting any other peripheral stats. It's literally just striking, maybe knockdowns. Like, he scored well his last time out, but those were majority strikes that he was like throwing from his back. He was throwing elbows and punches at Bruno Silva from his back, which Bruno Silva was holding him down. Bruno Silva is not a wrestler or a grappler. So this is like a massive, massive hole in his game. More likely than not, he will be able to overcome it because he is that much better on the feet. But I think Trocoli is much more live than like this ownership or these lines entail. So,
Dan, remind me, who was the fighter Trocoli was supposed to fight just recently? Do you remember who it was?
He was supposed to fight Aliskerov last week.
Okay, that's who it was. Okay.
Yeah, and he would have gotten absolutely rinsed because
But it also says something, I guess, when a fighter who hasn't fought in the UFC, they're throwing him in there against that dude. And then they're like, hey, jump in against this dude. Like, they obviously think he's somewhat skilled, right, Dan? And I think you broke it down pretty good with the deficiencies of Shara. And I'm assuming that he should have been working on, clearing up some parts of that game. But you never know. And I saw the same thing you saw. Like, he was getting held down, and it was very tilting watching that fight because obviously, I'm sure like you, we both had him. Mm-hmm. But I said in that fight, man, if he ever gets a dude who's like a real wrestler or grappler, because he is not, he's going to be in trouble. Like, he's going to be in big trouble. And Trocoli, he looked good on the scales. Like, so I would assume he'd been training because he was gonna fight.
The fight last week.
So it's like he's been in shape. He's been training probably, which is good. And I'm with you. I think the dog has a really good chance to win this fight. I think he has a good shot here. So I really like the dog as a bet. Like, and for DFS, I think he's great leverage. Shara is going to be one of the most popular fighters on the entire card. And I think he's a good guy to go under on or fade, which I'm going about probably doing at this point. I know it's Friday, obviously slate starts tomorrow, but I'm moving towards the camp of fading him because, like you said, it's all kickboxing anyways. And yes, he could throw volume up there, but if you got a guy who's going to be constantly grappling with you and can hold him down a little bit, those strikes from the back, that's not going to work like all the time. You know what I mean? Like that's just not going to work against like actual true like wrestlers and grapplers.
Not a winning strategy.
It's not. And it's a strategy that's going to keep you on your back a lot of times. So if that's the case, it's going to end up losing him rounds going forward in the UFC if he tries that crap. So I think I'm going to fade. I think that's going to be my biggest stand on the card is from a DFS perspective. I'm going to probably fade Shara, and I'm going to be high on Trocoli, and I'm going to bet Trocoli here. I think he has a chance to win this fight and shock a lot of people here. Is he the biggest dog on the card right now, Dan?
I believe he is. Yeah.
He is plus 400 right now. So
they come down a little bit. He was.
I think Shara opened up a minus 700 favorite, right?
Yeah, it was much wider. Yeah. So I'm not quite gonna fade Shara. I'll still have a good amount of him. He's gonna come in at like 50%. I will likely be under that. Trocoli, like. He's 6,700. He's going to be 8% owned. So it's like when I say I'm going to go like, heavier on him, it's all relative,
15,
like
20%. That's way over.
Exactly. Yeah.
100%.
So I feel like Trocoli is quite possibly like our Weston Wilson play this week, another similar thing to, what was it? Robles Spain and, Acosta Cortez. We were on that.
Oh, baby. Cortez, what a hero.
Yeah. What so you get these very like publicly popular fighters, like especially when they're very publicly popular and all they have is striking and have no grappling, and they go up against someone who like they might suck. Like Trocoli probably sucks. Waldo Cortez, not exciting, kind of sucks, but like they've got enough grappling to like beat somebody who has absolutely none of it. And I think Antonio Trocoli fits that prototype pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, Trocoli's got like in his fighting career, he's got a good amount of decisions or submissions. So, it's probably, if he wins, it's probably by submission or decision. He's got 5 submission wins. He's got 3 by TKO and 12 wins total. So like, I think, just a sprinkle on the submission prop at 16-1 is interesting. He's 10-1 by decision. I think either one of those is a solid bet.
Well, I think 16-1 is is Shara's number for submission. So Trocoli is plus 700 to get a sub, I believe.
Nope. I'm looking at it on DraftKings right now. So Shara is 7-1 by submission, and Trocoli is 16-1.
I think that's flipped, I think, because I'm looking at Bet Online and they've got Shara by submission 1,600 and Trocoli plus 700. Oh yeah,
I'm looking. I can send you a screenshot from DraftKings.
Send you a screenshot of what I'm looking at because it actually DraftKings does have it flipped. So if you're getting plus 1,600 for Trocoli submission on DraftKings, I would actually hit that. I think that's
okay.
That's quite a bit better than that online number.
I just bet it right now. Can I show the screen? Can you see my screen?
Barely. But here, I'm gonna screenshot what I'm looking at. Not that it really matters.
I just put $100 on it right there.
There you go.
Boom.
I'm about to
16-1. I swear to God. So I'll post it in the Discord too. So you said that was flipped on Bet Online?
Yeah, it's the opposite on Bet Online. So I think DraftKings might have.
Yeah, Trocoli's 30-1 in round 1, 40-1 in round 2, and 55-1 in round 3 on DraftKings right now for sub.
DraftKings, I think, fucked that up. So I'll go ahead and continue on that.
Get on that now while you got a chance there. 16-1. Why not? Dan needed a submission prop because he's gotta go with it for the bit. So favorite bet by submission is Antonio Trocoli at 16-1. All right, me and you are very high on Trocoli. Here's a dog. We're going to be lower on Shara. That's going to be one of our main stances.
High on him. we're high on him relative to his ownership. I just don't.
Dan is going to be high on Shara relative to his ownership, whatever the fuck that means.
Trocoli. Well, we're going to be high.
I am going to be lower on him, period. Like, I'm going to be lower and just hope he doesn't get an early knockout.
I just want to make it clear, like, I'm not playing any absurd amount of Trocoli. It's going to be like. What
was the fight I told you to just grab your nuts and do it? I'm going to tell you, just grab your nuts and click the X button on that dude.
I feel like you tell me that on a weekly basis.
That's true. I do say that definitely all the time. I will say, for the record, last week, whoever I said it about, he won. So that's all I know is last week it worked. So if it worked last week, it's going to work again this week, baby. That's how we do it here.
That's how it works.
Yeah, 100%. Let's go to the next fight here. We got Calvin Gastelum, 8,900 for Calvin Gastelum against D-Rod, Daniel Rodriguez, 7,300 for D-Rod. There was a little weight issue, I guess, here, Dan. I don't know the exact one. I think Calvin Gastelum was worried about making the weight.
Yeah, he asked for a catch weight fight at 180, and then he couldn't make the 180, so I believe we're at 185. I think that's, which is like really funny because Gastelum has a YouTube show called Missing Weight, where he just like goes around and eats. Which
he's missing weight. He's definitely doing that. And I was saying it to you. I was like, D-Rod usually looks like he's coming in as like the heavier fighter.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's going to be the case in this fight. Even though both guys are pretty big, I think Gastelum's going to look a little bigger, which is a little interesting. But you talked about this fight from a leverage perspective. Like Calvin Gastelum's not really a great DFS option, just in general, just the way he fights. He's a decision fighter mainly. He's been finished by submission a few times. That's really most of the time the way he's losing, or by decision. But they're good fighters he's losing to when he's losing. Obviously, he's losing to Cannonier and Whittaker, Brady. These are solid fighters right there. So I guess there's like nothing to, scoff at or anything, but he gets D-Rod. So it's a step down, I think, from those type of fighters. What are you seeing here at 8,900 for Gastelum? Because you got to sell me on him a little bit, because I can't really do it.
Yeah, I mean, the main argument for Gastelum, I think, because he's not going to get there on volume. You cannot, you can't rely on him for that. He's been in multiple 5-round fights, and he's never broken 100 strikes in any fight, let alone the 5-round fights he's been in. So, volume is just not there. Power, he doesn't really finish guys. He's mostly going to decisions. He's losing by submission as well. Yeah, I mean, I think the main argument for Gastelum is he will be lower owned in that range, although I have him at 20. I'd like to see him probably a little bit lower if I was going to be like happy to get there. He's just really expensive for what he offers. I think playing him, you're kind of hoping that D-Rod is washed, which he hasn't looked great in his last few fights. It's been up against some stiffer competition. There's really no shame in losing, to Neil Magny. Neil Magny is a super solid guy in the division. He got finished the very first time, his last time out, by Ian Gary, who just landed like a perfect head kick, like right on that artery that just puts you to sleep. Arguably lost the decision to Jing Liang, where he was like the much, much larger guy. So that's a bit of a concern. You just don't really love what you've seen out of him. But all that said, he's aggressive. He throws more volume. I don't know. I don't love it. He's going to be one of the higher owned dogs down there. And I'm not going to get there. I'll be getting to more Gastelum just for leverage purposes. I mean, he's implied 31% to win the fight inside the distance, which isn't great, especially not in that range, but it's also not unusable by any means. And I think he's the more talented striker. I don't think this fight is going to go to the ground at all. I've got Gastelum by decision, but like we talked about earlier in the show, if he knocks D-Rod out, you're probably going to have a score that contends for optimal at much lower ownership than the rest of the range. which is great.
Yeah, like if you're 150ing, there, just from a leverage standpoint, I think what you're saying is kind of like it's a good idea to be maybe even with the field on someone like Gastelum, or you could go a little higher.
I mean, last week I played, I had a good amount of Gabriel Fernandez, and like she didn't rate out very well in the range at all, but she was going to come in like 20 or less that I had projected. And then, you know, when the cards flipped over, she was like 11% owned. I had like 20 something. She ended up being optimal. So like those are the spots you really want to get into because, you know, like we discussed at the beginning of the show, what's the most likely outcome? Gastelum wins a decision, low volume, doesn't score well. What happens if D-Rod is as washed or more washed than we think, and he touches him on the chin? Yeah. I mean, any of these guys can land a knockout. Like,
that's a good point. And on top of it, like last time out, we saw Calvin Gastelum. He just got out wrestled by Brady. Yeah. Like that's what happened. There was no like, he just couldn't stop it, and then he ends up getting subbed in round 3. But it was just total domination. Yeah. I don't think D-Rod's going to be able to do that to Calvin Gastelum. So, you know, we're probably seeing a lot of standing on the feet. And so he's definitely, you know, in a better spot in that situation. Yeah. So maybe it is a good idea to get a little bit of this fight just from a DFS perspective, the ownership and everything like that. If the ownership starts to move though on Gastelum, I would be out. Like if he's not going to be by far the lowest owned 9K guy, or like upper 8 and 9K guy, I would be out on him.
Yeah, he will be. And again, just this is another one of those spots where like D-Rod, he's the underdog. He's going to be more owned because he's one of the underdogs that, you know, in people's minds, he's got a better chance to win than the other guys at the bottom. But like we've already discussed guys like Robero and Trocoli, like that we like down at the bottom. So, you know, you can use that to kind of like get off of the deer. It's not going to be
D-Rod,
you know.
Yeah, no, but he's going to be more popular.
In my opinion,
he's going to be more popular than those other guys. So I get what you're saying. Yeah. All right. So do you have Gastelum winning a decision though?
I do. Yeah.
I think that's the most likely scenario. But all right, let's go to, we got 2 more fights on the card. 2 pretty great fights too, honestly. We got Sergey Pavlovich, 8,700 for Pavlovich versus Mr. Alexander Volkov here. Volkov coming in at 7,500. And we just saw Volkov out. I think he was Tuivasa. Yeah, Tuivasa. He subbed him. And then Pavlovich coming off of an L. A first time in a while. He got put out by Aspinall, which no shame in that. Tom Aspinall's right now #1. So I don't think we put any downgrades in losing to him. But these guys are friends. They've trained before, I think, together. Volkov was talking about a little bit. Now, I do think that Volkov is going to try 2 things because Sergey's going to come right at him because he needs to get in his opponent's face no matter what it is. And every opponent he faces wants to do the same thing, Dan, or most of them anyways. They want to take him down. Volkov, I don't think is going to be able to just stay at range and just pick him apart. So I think he knows he's going to need to grapple in this fight. Can he do that? Can Sergey stop the takedowns or the grappling exchanges? If he does, I think he can put him out. But if Volkov can win some of those grappling exchanges and find a way down or somehow on top of him, that could be dangerous here. So I do think Volkov has a sneaky path at 7,500 to winning, especially because these guys have both trained together, so they know each other very well. Volkov's going to know exactly what he cannot do. Now, he could still make a mistake easily, and all you need is one mistake against someone like Sergey with his power. He can put you out pretty fast. So this is a good DFS fight. I think both guys have a ton of upside. I'm probably going to be way overweight on this fight, Dan. Like, if this fight burns me, it burns me, because I think, you know, Sergey's my favorite guy in the 8K range, like in that like upper 87, 8,700 to 89, those 3 or 4 guys. And Volkov is really good in the 7Ks, obviously. So I think this is a fight you want to be over on in DFS. I think one guy gets finished, and I'm going to go with Sergey as my pick, but I could see the Volkov side because I could see how he gets there. But talk about it a little bit because I know you're higher on Volkov.
Yeah, so I actually picked Volkov to win inside the distance. I think, Pavlovich, it's funny because like Pavlovich has been to 3 decisions overall. He's got, I think, 20 fights total. So if you take those 3 decisions and all his other fights, you could watch all of Sergey Pavlovich's pro fights in like under an hour and a half because that's how quickly he's finishing these. So we don't really have like a super good recent or any idea how he's going to fare like outside of the first maybe 7 minutes. I think his fight with did the Blades fight make it to the second round? Oh, maybe not. No. Okay.
I don't think any. I literally don't think any of his fights from the UFC have made it to the second round.
No, I think you're right, actually. Yeah, so right there, we've seen Volkov, go much further into fights. Volkov is actually also, he's extremely durable. So Pavlovich has, he's got like that one thing. He's got the death touch, and that's amazing. But what happens if he doesn't put Volkov out immediately? I think Volkov can outwork him and actually finish him as well, because we've seen Pavlovich hurt. Like, we just saw him get hurt. Yeah, I mean, again, it's like this feels like a coin flip fight, and Pavlovich is like more than a 2-1 favorite, which feels very wrong. A lot of these heavyweight fights can be a letdown and boring. I don't think this is going to be one of them. I think they're going to trade. I think, so whoever wins is going to win extremely violently. So like, to your point, picks aside, I'm going to be extremely heavy on both sides of this fight. I'm actually like pretty shocked at Volkov's ownership. I haven't projected at 26%, which feels extremely low. I feel like
I might just lock this fight.
Yeah, Volkov actually, he also rates out extremely poorly for me, but that's because of his like inside the distance KO numbers, which looking at them seem extremely low. I think Pavlovich is being massively overvalued here. He's going to be the second most popular fighter on the card. I mean, like, for good reason, his knockout potential, quick win potential, his price, all of those point to a smash play, but you're going to gain massive leverage on the field if Volkov can knock him out and you are over on Volkov. So that's where I'm going to try to be.
Are you going to be like, how heavy are you going to be on this fight? Are you going to be like all in on this fight? Are you going to be like close to it?
We're at 11 fights now, so I'm probably going to be like, let's see, it's projecting to be 70%, so I'll probably be like mid to high 80s.
Yeah, I'm going to be 100 because if Volkov wins, which you're saying is, like, I think he does finish him later in the fight, and at 7,500, I don't care when the finish is. If he finishes him, I think he could easily be optimal at that point, unless we just get some crazy dogs that just score, big, like Trocoli and someone else have like massive scores somehow. But
yeah, Volkov just like I think Volkov is like pretty underrated, and I think he's got more skills and more paths. That like Pavlovich has one path, and it's knock your head off. Volkov, we've seen submissions from him, we've seen grappling. He can also knock your head off, and he's durable. So yeah, I really, really like Volkov here.
All right, let's go to the final fight here of the night. We got Robert Whittaker, 8,400 for Whittaker against Ikram Aliskerov, 7,800 for Aliskerov. This dude is super dangerous. His only loss is to Hamza Chimaev. This is a few years ago, I think it was. I'm pretty sure he got knocked out. But yeah, so this kid's really good. I saw something too. Who was it talking? Someone was talking about Kamaru Usman, and Usman would use him to spar a lot back before Ikram was even in the UFC. I forget who was the one telling the story, but he was talking about how like they used to have great like sparring sessions and stuff like that, and Ikram used to hold his own with Kamara back when like in Usman's like prime and stuff like that. So, this dude is seriously skilled. He hasn't fought the top tier talent like Robert Whittaker is. So this is a big step up for him in the UFC. But I mean, the UFC definitely thinks this kid could be a star. He's definitely confident. I mean, I guess when you've only lost to Hamza Chimaev, you feel like you're pretty good. Probably he's 15-1, and I think he's got a really good shot. And I'm not just talking about the age factor that we go with, but I don't know if Bobby Whittaker is slowing down, but the cost to fight, even though he won, and I know he won, it just didn't feel great. Like, I don't know about you, Dan, but it could be that Bobby Whittaker slowing down. I could be wrong too. He's a great fighter. I think that he could easily find a way to win, especially the later rounds. Maybe Ikram slows down after, a few rounds, and then he kind of wins out those later rounds. I got to go with the younger kid, though. I think Ikram is just really good. I think he has a really good shot. And as a dog, I'm just going to lean on the dog side here. I think he's got upside in a finish if he can get the finish. If he can't get the finish, though, then, I still think he could win on volume, and maybe he gets a knockdown or something like that. We've seen Whittaker hurt. Like, he's got even the Costa fight, like he ate that kick, which I don't know how he ate that kick, but
bell rang.
Yeah, his bell was definitely rung. So yeah, this should be a good fight. I get, if people are like, I want to wait and see him against someone to this talent of Whittaker, but I think he's good enough, man. I think he's good enough. He's got upside for DFS too. 7,800. I'm going to be in on Aliskerov. What about you?
Well, I picked Whittaker, but I agree with you that Aliskerov is probably the better DFS play. I was expecting him to be higher owned because, I guess I'm not surprised that he's not higher owned. So, like, Whittaker and Aliskerov, they're 36 and 39% respectively. So Aliskerov a little higher. I was expecting more just because of the price, and people seem to really like him. But I've actually heard quite a few people on Whittaker in this fight for the reasons you mentioned. Like, they want to see more from Aliskerov, and I'm in that camp as well. I just think this is a really big ask for Aliskerov, especially on short notice. He was preparing to fight, but he was preparing to fight Trocoli, which is quite a bit different. It's, not even its talent and matchup. They're very different. I don't know if Whittaker is necessarily slowing down. Like, he won that I thought he won that Costa fight pretty handedly. Obviously, he got steamrolled by Dricus, who is the current champion. I think his only other loss recently is to Izzy, unless I'm getting that wrong.
Yeah, I think so.
So, his most recent losses are to the current champion and the former champion of the division. I still think he's got more left in the tank. I'm not sure the age model. I mean, here's the thing. So Aliskerov is 2 years younger, which isn't that big, but I mean, it's undeniable that Bobby has a lot more wear on.
He has more fights. He has way more fights.
Yeah. He's been in way more wars. That definitely starts to wear on you. Yeah, I mean, Aliskerov's his best weapon is his grappling, getting you down to the mat. That's where he wants the fight to get. But Whittaker has really, really solid takedown defense. So what happens when Aliskerov can't get the fight down to the mat? I think Bobby's going to piece him up on the feet. The volume, DFS-wise, upside for Whittaker, I think you're mostly kind of reliant on a finish, which he could get. We haven't really... You mentioned the Chimaev fight. Did you watch that at all?
I did not get to see that fight. No.
He got knocked out. He got knocked out badly. Like, Chimaev hit him with an uppercut, and he was like out on the mat for many minutes. Like, he was in really bad shape. They had like the doctors in there and shit.
You think Whittaker could do that?
I think he can. I think it's possible. I think that's his best path. But just looking at this ownership, if this fight,
when was the last time Bobby Whittaker knocked someone out like that?
It's been a while.
I know he's fought really good fighters, so I'm not saying it like, it's a huge knock, but I'm just saying like it's been a while to even go back to when he found a knockout.
His last knockout. Jesus Christ.
You're going back years, buddy.
I'm going back years.
Keep scrolling.
Yeah, 2017.
It just,
so it's not, I mean, it's not his most, it's not the most likely.
Not
but
that he can't do it, but it's just like, I don't know. I think the more likely outcome, if you're a Whittaker backer, is he stops the takedowns. And like you said, he kind of just pieces him up on the feet. And he kind of just in and out. He's because he is quick. He's in and out. He's got nice low kicks and stuff like that. Like he's got some power to like sting you, and kind of like volume him maybe.
Yeah.
But that's not even like his actual game is the funny part, Whittaker. Like even that's not really like his game, but it is 5 rounds. So like over 5 rounds, do you think he could rack up enough volume to get there in a decision win?
I think he can. It's a little bit dicey, but 8,400 isn't the most restrictive.
Yeah.
I think he's probably, I mean, I haven't, he rates, 5-round fights always rate out high for me. You're adding 2 rounds where,
And what if the 9K range fails?
Right.
Like what if the 9K range busts? Which I'm not saying that like 100% could happen, but like what if it does and it's just like all 8K, guy, like, maybe a 88 from him gets it done in a decision 5 round. Like, you don't know. So
the more we talk about it and the more I look at it, it's like, I think Whittaker wins. I think his prospects of hitting the optimal are more dicey than Aliskerov's just because of the styles that they fight and their respective paths to victory. And since I'm going to be shoving the Pavlovich Volkov fight pretty hard, this might be a rare week where I'm not fully 100% on the 5-round fight. Yeah, the more I look at it.
That's shocking. I think this is the first time ever you'll be under on a 5-round fight. I don't know. I don't know
everything. I still might be over, but it might be like, I might have like 90% of it instead of 100, something like that.
I might have to lock this fight then. I might have to lock the last 2 fights now that you said that. I might just have to go all in just so we can be opposite.
Yeah. Well, and all these things I'm saying too, like about where I'm going to go. I have not built yet. I ran some like just preliminary runs. So I would have like something to look at, a general idea of where I'm going. Everything will be finalized likely by tonight and up on the site. I'll post it in the Discord for anybody that's got access to that. This is an interesting one. It's a really interesting card overall. Can go a lot of different ways. I don't think there's any one right way to play it. And the main event is just like the perfect encapsulation of that.
Yeah, I will say like it wouldn't shock me if some weird lineup with no 9K guys, maybe leaving like more than what I normally leave, which is like 500 or 600.
That would shock me.
I wouldn't be shocked if it was like, even more than that on the set. Like if the 9K range did bust and it was just a bunch of like 8K and upper 7s, you could end up leaving 1,000 on the table. It wouldn't shock me if some weird lineup like that, which I don't do normally.
Right.
But I think on an 11 fight card, I think you can kind of take the min salary, like raise it a little bit more just to, in case. So normally I'll leave like 500 to 600 max. Maybe I'll go to like 1,000 max and just kind of see what lineups it gives me. Cause it wouldn't stun me if there was more than normal, like left on the table at the end of the day here. I could see some dogs winning. There's some closely lined fights. And like you said, there's some wider fights that we think has a chance to be optimal. And if that were to happen, you could really see some different lineups. If you have like, let's say 2 of the 9K guys just straight out lose, you know what I mean? Not just have bad fights. So
I kind of think of it the opposite way though, because
was the optimal last week 1.8 or 1? Was that the optimal last week?
I don't know. So I've been trying to like like I use Cruncher Rewind to look at past contests, and they actually are missing a ton of data from last week. So I didn't look at it super close, but I'll pull it up right now and just take a look.
I mean, that wouldn't shock
last week
me.
was a complete shit show, so that would not surprise me.
Well, last week though, what I'm talking about, a lot of those guys failed right at the top.
I mean, so unless Rewind is showing me the completely wrong thing, it looks like the winning lineup last week spent all the salary.
That's what I thought, but
yeah, I think it was a 50K lineup that won. Maybe talking about a different contest.
Oh, we got the winner of the $3 in here. Says
okay.
$3.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. The $3 is much bigger than the main, right?
I think it's a little bigger, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't think it's like way bigger, but I think it's a little bigger. So nice job, man. Shout out to you winning the $3 here. I do like that $3 contest. Nice little mini max if you want to check it out. If you want to try more lineups and stuff like that, it's a good test right there. Throwing some lineups in that $3. But Dan, let's give our favorite bets here. We've almost gone 2 hours, so let's get our bets and go from there here.
Trocoli by sub, baby, plus 1,600. But as a bonus, I also like Volkov money line. I think he gets it done.
Volkov. Oh, you're giving 2 bets out. Look at you here. I'm gonna go with my boy Chang Ho Lee money line. I think it's between like literally minus 108 and minus 115, depending on like the book you're at. I know DK is up to like 115. I will also give Andre Lima money line. I like both those guys. Close fights there. Close, almost like coin flip fights. But I like both those to get it done. So Lee and Lima, my 2 picks today. Good luck to everyone this week. Tomorrow in the MMA contest and any other contests you got going on for tonight and tomorrow. Don't forget, Run Pure Sports, RPS15 is your promo code for 15% off. Get in the Discord. We got single sport packages. If you just want the MMA content, you can get the MMA content. Or if you want the whole thing, get the whole thing. We got baseball, golf, showdown for all these sports going on right now. WNBA has been hot for, my guys Greg and JVC have been shipping in that sport, whatever that sport is. And we got soccer, Euros right now, pitcher props from our guy Stats. He's been crushing it with the props. So check those out over on the bet side. We got it all for you. So come check us out. RPS15 is your promo code. With that, me and Dan are going to get out of here. We'll see you guys next week. For Dan and myself, good luck to everyone. We're out of here. Peace.